So here are the 4 boxes we're going to be unboxing today. The Aeldari Dark Reapers, the Aeldari Guardians, the Aeldari Warlocks, and Maugan Ra for the Aeldari. So let's kick it off. We'll start with the Guardians and go from there. Alright, so here is the new Aeldari Guardians box. It says 11 miniatures, which I assume includes the support weapon. There's obviously the 40mm base for the support weapon. So here's the new transfer sheet. If you got a copy of Eldritch Omens, I believe this is an identical transfer sheet. There's a lot of throwback transfers on here actually, particularly the Falcon ones that I recognised from years and years ago. A good selection of all the craft worlds, aspect runes. Cool. 28mm bases for the Guardians, and like I said, there's a 40mm one for the support weapon. Now let's look at the actual sprues. So this is the new support weapon, and obviously part of it's the combat weapon, so we'll get these to one side. So, support weapon, including the new shield variant for the Storm Guardians, plus all the Aeldari combat weapons. You get a whole bunch of accessories there in terms of ammo pouches and grenades and bits as well. I think that there is the power sword that the unit's allowed to have. So it's allowed 2 special weapons, either flamers or fusion guns, and 2 power swords for 10 models. And obviously these swords down here don't have the power nodule that one does. Going on to the next sprue. So this is obviously more combat weapons, shuriken pistols, shuriken catapults. It looks like they've only updated it so that now you're not having to try and get a hand to hold the gun. The hand is actually on the gun. Oh, let's say a left-handed flamer there as well. Interesting. Shuriken pistols. That's a scope down there. Fusion guns. So the last one must be all the new backs and heads. Yep. Oh, the antenna are actually part of the backs now. That's really good. They were a painful thing to line up and get right. I really like that. Okay, it looks like we get quite a few heads as well. We get the ones with the top knots and we get the standard Guardian heads, which is kind of cool. Lots of options there. Let's grab the instructions. Try not to get too much glare on there for you. So, there's the Guardian Defenders there, and there's the Storm Guardians there, and there's obviously the new shield variant there. It actually looks like a pretty straightforward build. Nothing too unusual there, which is nice. And then obviously you get the summary at the back there. The Storm Guardians look really good. It's really interesting to see the left-handed arms being needed there for that. So I'm assuming that means there's enough parts to... or there's left-handed shuriken weapons. I didn't see any in the builds. But yeah, that's your Aeldari Guardians new box. It's a massive step up from the old ones that have been hanging around since 3rd edition now. The mold lines on the sprues look almost non-existent, which is to be expected from a modern kit. So once they're together, we'll get some pics up at the end of the video. We're now moving on to the Aeldari Warlocks box. This is one of the half-size boxes. It contains 2 Aeldari Warlocks. I'll put that to one side. So, little instruction booklet. We'll have a quick look at this first. You obviously get 4 different heads, which is nice. 2 helmeted, 2 unhelmeted. And from the looks of it, what are we on? We're on 32mm bases. We are on 32s. Okay. Now, it looks like... I'm trying to figure out whether you get 2 spears and 2 swords, or whether you're only getting 1 of each. It's hard to tell. Let's check out the sprue. It is a single sprue. That's probably my biggest disappointment, is it does look like you're only getting one spear and one sword. You're obviously getting a lot of extra parts there in terms of the heads and bits and bobs, but the fact you have to have one with a sword and one with a spear is more than a little bit frustrating, particularly since without knowing what the Codex looks like yet, you know, you don't know whether you want a sword or a spear. I might have a quick look at that. Bear with me 1 second. Right, so having had a quick look at the Codex, yes, it is exceptionally frustrating. There's only one of each, because I feel like there's, for the 5-point difference between going from the Witchblade up to the Singing Spear, and the Singing Spear giving you a shooting profile and more damage in combat, for the extra 5 points, I feel like it's a no-brainer to just go to a spear. So the fact there's only one in here is probably a bit of a disappointment. You do get additional spears and swords in the Skyrunner kits, but unfortunately they're the wrong arms, so you would have to look at how you're going to swap both arms to make that work. It's possible, but again, a little bit fiddly and frustrating. Once we've got the kits together, we'll get some photos at the end of this video so you can check them out. We've also got a couple of the older Warlock models and a converted Warlock I did out of the plastic Farseer kit that I can compare it to. So stay tuned for the end of the video to check those out. Dark Reapers are the next one we're going to look at today. So that's a squad of 5, but you also do get this little version of Kane as the Executioner there. Let's check out the box. So again, we're getting this lovely A5 Craft Worlds decal set, which, like I said, in the Guardians and the Eldritch Omens box is all like nice and varied. We've got a bunch of aspect runes. Really like it. Moving on to the Reapers themselves, we do get 28mm bases for the Reapers and a 25mm here for their Shrine token. Now there's no rules for the Shrine markers either, so it's interesting that we're getting them. I'm assuming it's because of the Dire Avengers all those years ago. So, the Reapers themselves, again, look pretty straightforward to build. There's nothing too complicated there. They're certainly more dynamic than past editions, and we'll have a comparison shot with the older versions at the end of this video. What I do like is there's a couple of different ways you can build some of the models. That's obviously the X-Arch builds there. So we do get quite a few options. There's the different heads as well. I'm not sure if they're just going to be on the X-Arch though. So let's have a look at the sprues. So, sprue number 1. This is, from the looks of it, the X-Arch sprue. Oh, there's a few extra bits on there. So we've got a Shuriken Cannon, their Reaper launchers, more Reaper launchers. So it's a bit of a mixed... Oh, what is that head? That is a pretty cool head. Oh, yep, and there's our hooded head there. Lots of good options there. The main sprues. So those alternate heads are indeed just the X-Arch heads from the looks of it. There's our little Kane shrine. Super detailed. I really do like this kit, particularly in person. It's always hard to tell from the photos that you see online. That's obviously for the Tempest launcher. It is a lovely little kit. What's interesting is, again, it's only essentially those 3 frames, so it's not a massive kit, but it does come in a full-size box. So it does feel a little bit light on the frames, but you do get every option for the X-Arch and plenty of options for the squad. It looks like you get helmeted and unhelmeted heads for the Aeldari component. So now that we've seen these guys, let's move on to their Big Daddy, Maugan Ra. So here he is, Big Daddy Cool Maugan Ra, the new plastic kit. He looks like a pretty imposing sort of beast. We've actually got one of the 1998, I think it was. Maybe it's even older than that, the original Maugan Ra models here. So once we've built this guy, we'll put a comparison shot between the two at the end of the video. He does come on a 40mm base, as we saw with Jane Zar. We'll put that to one side. Here's the instructions. We'll have a quick look at those before we move on to the sprues. If anyone's built a Death Jester, I'm hoping it's not anywhere near as bad as that. It actually looks pretty straightforward again. It's nice to see that. Moving on. It still looks like you're going to be able to build this in a couple of pieces. I like the giant skull. That's a good nod to the original model. Certainly the back piece looks like a fairly standard thing to leave separate, and the fact you can leave him off the base to paint that separately feels like a solid choice as well. I'm not sure about that hood, whether you'll be able to get the gun on if you put the hood on but don't put the gun on. We'll have to look at that in the assembly as we go. So let's look at the sprue. Single character sprue. I'm assuming he's going to retail for around what Jane's R does here in Australia, about $70. He does look pretty big. No options, obviously, being a Phoenix Lord. The detail on the Maugan guitar is really, really crisp. It's not just a power blade, it is now a bony protrusion of a weapon, which is nice. He still feels pretty big. Like, I know he was pretty chunky back in the Road Trader, but he's certainly not the spindly elf that most people would think of when you talk about elves and Eldar. I'm really loving that Maugan guitar. It's so detailed. You got all these lovely runes in the base, like we've seen in some of the other models. I'll turn him around to get a good shot of his face. Now, what's interesting about the face there is it's actually pretty close to the old version in that it's still got the stone in the middle of its head and still got the sort of the skull visage, but it's, if anything, it's a little bit less imposing than the old version, which is interesting. There's lots of nods to the old version though, like, you know, you've obviously got the skeletal spine that forms the back banner. We've still got the tassel of hair, but instead of the Reaper symbol and like the targeting array up the top, we actually have a Reaper skull, and the targeting array is instead the spine and rib cage. So this should be very cool to paint up, and like I say, I think, looking at the way it attaches, we should be able to paint it separately to make sure that we can get in and get all that detail, because you can see the ribs just kind of plug into the back there. So anyway, we'll be back in a second with Maugan Ra all assembled and a comparison shot against his original 2nd edition model. So stay tuned.